So here's the situation with this truck. From 2001 to 2004, these Chevy Duramaxes went with the LB7 engine. Now, GM found out that there was an injector problem, and they found out it was such a big issue that they offered an extended warranty for 7 years or 200,000 miles, whichever came first.
Now, the extended warranty is nice because it gives you a warm feeling, especially if you actually have a problem during that warranty period.
Right.
But unfortunately, people like this with the 2003, well, when the warranty runs out is when he ran into an issue, and that's not fun because now you're stuck footing the bill, and something like this is going to cost you about $5,000 to repair if you take it to a dealership or a shop. Now, if you want to take the time, do it yourself, you can, which is a job you can do, you can save yourself about half the money.
Now, you've got to ask yourself first, how do I know that I'm having an injector issue? Well, there's 3 different signs that are pretty good indicators. First of all, you could see some excessive smoke going out the back of the exhaust pipe,
Right.
which is exactly what happened with this particular truck right here. Secondly, you might notice that your oil level's going up, but you're not adding oil. That's actually fuel getting into your oil, and that's happening through a faulty injector. Or you could notice just a really, really hard start,
Right. Now, with this truck having the white smoke out the back, that was our telltale sign we were having a problem. Now, fortunately, this truck had an Edge CTS programmer on board, and that allowed us to dig a little deeper with some diagnostics. What we were trying to find out is the balance rate of the injectors. Now, there's different parameters set up for the engine, and in gear, you want to have there's a parameter of plus or minus 6.0. Now, in gear, the number 6 cylinder of this was showing out of that parameter was over 6, so that means we're definitely having a problem with at least one injector and potentially problems with all of them.
Now, here's the situation. Okay, we did all that work and we got to this point, right? What are we going to do? Fix one injector and then put it all back together, and then maybe next week we've got the same issue with the next one down the line? We don't want to do that.
No.
So while we're here and all the stuff's out of the way, let's just swap all of them out, man.
I'm with you on that.
I figured you would be. So in order to get to this point, the first thing we did was drain the coolant. And another thing to keep in mind when you're taking apart the fuel lines is you're going to need a specialty tool like this fuel line quick disconnect tool that we got from Merchant Automotive. Now, this tool will release that internal clip that you see right here so that the lines can separate.
To get the upper valve cover out of the way, we had to make ourselves a little tool like this. We took a swivel socket and put an Allen tip in the front because back here there isn't a whole lot of clearance. It allowed us to get the angle, get that valve cover off, and saved us a lot of time. Now, the next part of our disassembly is to go ahead and get our wiring harnesses off. Now, we've got one undone. The other one will come off here. And once the wiring harness is out of the way, then we can start attacking that lower valve cover.
Here we go.
Got it?
Yeah. Now, this injector is held in by this little bolt that goes in right there on the bottom. So once you get that out of the way, we're going to use this injector removal tool that we also got from Merchant Automotive, and that actually slides right in to the bolt hole like that. Then you put the wrench on it and you pry it back, right? And you'll hear it pop. Once it pops, you can slide this thing right out and you're moving on. There you go.
Now, one thing you will notice is that there is a copper washer on the bottom of this injector, and what that does, it seals the injector to the cup. Now, make sure that when you pull out these injectors that this copper washer comes out, because if not, you'll have them double stacked up and you won't have this thing fit in there right, and you're going to have all kinds of problems. Hey, welcome back. Now it's time to go ahead and put in these new Bostech injectors. Now, before you go and try and put them in, use a little lithium grease right here on the O-ring to allow it to slide into place, and put a little bit down here on the nozzle so that this copper washer will stay in place when you turn it upside down.
Now, Bostech's been in the automotive business since the 1930s, and they specialize in injectors and high-pressure pumps and all things related to the fuel system of diesel vehicles. So all of these injectors are remanufactured right here in the USA, and they come with all the parts. Now, Bruno mentioned the washer, the O-rings, that's all part of it. So everything you need is there. You don't have to go out and buy any additional parts when you get these injectors.
Now, what's great about these injectors is the fact that they address the root of the problem. A lot of companies will try and put a new set of nozzles on and think that's going to make the fix. The real problem comes down to the control valve. These things get beat up, and what happens is the seat goes away. Once that seat goes away, you lose real control of your fuel, and that's the real problem. So these guys go above and beyond with some crazy tight tolerances to make sure that that seat stays in place.
Yeah, we're not talking thousands. We're talking tenths of thousands. Now try saying that 10 times. It's difficult. But you look at 25,000 PSI. Now here is the control valve you were talking about, right? Now that's going to go right here in the typical injector. That goes right about there. So we'll sit it there. Now look at this little teeny tiny bearing. It's going to sit right there, and that controls things. Now the fuel is blasting in there, right? So if you got any junk in the fuel, it's eating away at that and it's going to erode it. That's where your problem's going to be almost 80% of the time, not in the nozzle. So they're using better products, you know, just harder metals. Everything is better right there, and that's going to hold up longer and keep you out of the shop, right?
Bostech also backs up these injectors with an unlimited mileage 12-month warranty. Right now I'm torquing down these injectors to 35 foot-pounds, which is the proper torque spec. And you want to be careful and do it the right way because, remember, we've got these copper washers that these injectors are sitting on. So the right torque spec is going to allow these to crush and seal properly.
Once he's done with that, we can get in there and reinstall this return fuel rail right there, so that's ready to go. Then we can put on this lower valve cover right here. Now what we did was we put a little adhesive in here, nothing too major, just get that ready to go. That way, when we put this gasket on here, it's actually going to stick, right? Because we're going to be turning this thing upside down and shoving it in there, and knowing one of us, we're going to bang it on something. So you don't want this dropping out. You want it to stay in place.
Now, when you're swapping out these injectors, you're doing this job, it requires a little bit more than just the injector. So we called up the guys at Merchant Automotive and we asked them to give us what we call the deluxe package. And you can see we've got all kinds of seals and gaskets, some cool specialty tools, and we're also going to replace the fuel lines. Now, the other ones, there was a lot of contamination, a lot of rust and stuff that was sitting through those lines. So why put old, dirty lines in there which can contaminate the new injectors? We'll put brand new ones in.
It's nice with the guys from Merchant Automotive because you can say, look, I want to do this particular task on this particular truck, and these guys are experts. They know what they're talking about, and they'll go, okay, you need this, that, and that. And you're like, hey, send it to me. It's going to make the job a lot easier. We've got the brand new fuel lines going in, and here's why. Let's take a look at the injector, and here's where the old fuel line butts up to it, right? So you take a look at this, and when you're disconnecting everything, now you've got this big opening between the fuel line and the housing right there. Boom, you pull that out, and look at all the junk that falls down in there. Now I know what you're thinking, what's the big deal? I'm replacing the injector anyway, right? So that's going out. Well, here's the deal. If you put the new injector in there and then you use this old line, there's no telling how much junk is still up in here, and then that's going right into your new injector, and that's not good. In fact, here's the old one. We actually cut it apart. I always love cutting things up, you know? So here's what's going on the inside. You've got this little lip and this opening. So all that junk is building up right there. So out with the old, we're changing out the injectors, the new fuel lines and all that. So here's the new one, nice and clean, right? Nothing in there, no junk. Now when we put this in, we're gonna put a little white lithium grease right on here. So that slides in nice and good. Now we still have the gap though, right? We'll take some silicone, we'll go around like that, and that's gonna keep all of that nonsense from getting down in there, and that's gonna keep our system nice and clean.
Now, keeping with the theme of going the extra mile, at this point, since you've got the fuel system all apart, it's a good time to go ahead and take apart the fuel filter head. Now, you can get a rebuild kit from Merchant Automotive, and they'll give you the seals and the O-rings to do so, as well as some very cool parts to replace some inferior parts. Now, like this right here, this bleed screw, you can see the plastic one that comes from the factory that's easily damaged. You can discard that and put a brand new billet one in place. Now, the same thing with the plug that goes in the bottom of the filter. This new billet one will replace this one that's damage prone, where the wires actually just fell out of. This is the water and fuel sensor, so you can get rid of that and have a nice good seal with the billet one. You've got nice tools to put the stuff in place. They're all custom, and you can get what I think is a really cool thing is this little spacer right here. As simple as it is, it can make your life a whole lot easier. What you're doing is you're moving the filter away from the engine just far enough where you can actually get a filter wrench around it and do service on your engine easily.
Now, keep in mind, the guys at Merchant Automotive are not only a retail establishment where you can get all of this stuff, but they're a full-on shop where they're doing everything from repairs to one-off custom builds and everything in between, right? So these guys eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff, so you know they're going to hook you up with the right stuff.